it's not that technology, it's not that capability that threatens you. It's the short-sightedness of the management above you that threatens you. If they can't see how to use that to actually lift you up, lift you and the rest of your organization up to serve at a higher level what it is you're trying to do as an organization.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work, episode 367. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Our community is growing thanks to you, our loyal listeners. As you probably know, we launched a weekly newsletter. It contains additional fun facts and some clips from the main show that don't always make it into the weekly episode. If you are not already subscribed, click the link in the show notes and join us there. We are all in this together. I mean that in a very kind of metaphysical sense. If you enjoyed today's episode or any other, do us all a favor. Share it with just one friend. They'll know you care about using AI to make humans better. And if someone you know shared this with you, say thanks and pay it forward. If you leave a comment, I just may share it in an upcoming episode, like this one from Pranab in Falls Church, Virginia, who's a consultant. Pranab's favorite episode is number 271 with Jonathan Siddharth, CEO of AI data labeling company Turing, which has been in the news quite a bit lately, about unleashing human potential with AI. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly, and of course the added bonus, you get one AI fun fact each week. Today's fun fact comes from Evie Fuel and Courtney Lang, who write in Atlantic Council about navigating the new reality of international AI policy. In it, they say initial momentum for policies focused on ensuring AI safety have lost momentum. Current discussions are focused on individual nations competing with each other rather than global cooperation. There are 4 key areas that national governments should individually prioritize in their efforts to advance AI adoption while also collaborating on a global level. 1, assess and address global regulatory gaps. 2, advance industry-led discussions around open source and open weight models. 3, foster trust by encouraging the development and adoption of AI testing. And 4, drive public-private collaboration across borders to promote AI adoption and drive risk management. The world must not lose the gains already made by researchers, policymakers, and enterprises that have been working to address AI risks. Of course, I'll share a link to that important article in today's show notes. My commentary: it should come as no surprise that global AI safety and fair use policies have stalled. The lack of agreement has really nothing to do with AI safety and everything to do with the rising temperature of global discourse. In our push to promote American exceptionalism, speaking as an American, of course, we've alienated many allies and further distanced ourselves, even from adversaries. New alliances are forming that are impacting everything from global trade to immigration policies and defense spending. The fact that AI policy is caught in the literal and figurative crossfire is to be expected. It's also yet a further reminder that we can't leave important dialogues about responsible AI and human risk to policymakers. We, as practitioners, you listening to this podcast, must acknowledge that innovation knows no boundaries. It's up to us to hold each other accountable. Every human will suffer the consequences if we wait for global policymakers to intervene. Now, shifting to this week's important conversation, Kate O'Neill is a sought-after speaker and commentator on AI and tech humanism, who has appeared on BBC, NPR, Marketplace, and NBC. She was inducted into the Customer Experience Hall of Fame and has received numerous accolades, including Technology Entrepreneur of the Year, Power Leader in Technology, and Outstanding Woman in Data Analytics. She has contributed to global policy initiatives through her work with the United Nations AI Advisory Board. She's a repeat published author whose insights on AI, inclusivity, and finding meaning at work make her one of the most positive forces countering prevailing apprehension about the complicated relationship between humans and machines. Kate's latest book, What Matters Next, about making human-friendly tech decisions, was recently published to great fanfare. And without further ado, Kate, I've been looking forward to this one. It's my pleasure to welcome you to AI and the Future of Work. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about that illustrious background and how you get into the space.
Thanks, Dan. What a great intro, and what a great fact you shared, and great setup for this discussion too. Everything about this show is so well thought out. So thank you for that. I'm excited to be here, and my origin story, kind of my you could call it my villain origin story, I suppose. If the narrative that we're the Antichrist, if we're in AI ethics, is to be believed. I am a linguist by education who brings that enthusiasm for language as sort of the original technology of humanity to how I think about technology, and it got me into technology by way of content strategy. As I came out of my undergrad in languages and linguistics, I got into building websites back in the early 90s when it was brand new. And that got me into a number of other sort of what we were not yet calling user experience and information architecture types of roles, through all the way through to sort of data-driven experiences, multivariate testing, a lot of analytical stuff. And that whole through line to me was just infused with this enthusiasm for always kind of thinking about the alignment between what businesses were trying to accomplish and what people were trying to accomplish, and how technology could be the amplifier of that alignment as opposed to the amplifier of just the business objective. And so that actually turned into the credo that drives my work. It's a lot of what I do now. Is I think of it as, coming from this linguistics background, that I think of it as helping leaders translate human needs into scalable, tech-enabled choices.
Kate, everyone should have a credo, first of all. Just like everyone should study linguistics.
Yeah,
So you're a tech humanist.
that's right.
That's kind of the whole thesis behind AI and the future of work. But maybe not everyone agrees on what it means to be a tech humanist. What does it mean to you?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think one is pretty simple. It's just the idea that there's something special about humanity, right? Like that there's not uniquely special, not like we deserve some kind of special treatment over and above all other life on the planet, and that, we should survive and no one else should, or something like that. But that there is something special about the kind of culture that could produce pizza and the Statue of Liberty and Oscar Wilde and, all the many, many wonderful things about humanity. And so I think it's a shame if we allow, what makes us really beautifully human to be overridden by either excessively capitalistic incentives that don't allow us to flourish, or by technology that doesn't allow us to, bring our uniqueness to bear. And so I think those are the kinds of extremes that we're trying to unite in a tech humanist mindset. It sounds like it's just about technology and humanity, but business is the secret silent partner in that triad. And it really is a pretty important consideration, because all technology that meets humanity at scale is coming to us through a business imperative. And so that three-way relationship is really important to understand. Like, what is the business imperative? What is the business trying to do as it uses technology to scale its ambitions? And how does that then meet people on the other side of that experience and interaction? And how can we be really intentional about, kind of creating the right balance of how can we think about human experience in a meaningful way, and how can we think about, business advancement in a way that's satisfying to business leaders, and uses technology well in that relationship.
Kate, living in this really important time in kind of the history of civilization has created an opportunity both for us to confront what it means to be human, because when we're surrounded by technologies that might appear to be human, it forces us to have the conversation about who we are at our core.
Yeah.
It's both a threat, but it's also an opportunity to have that dialogue. You in the kind of the tech humanism community, how do you think about helping people wrestle with that really complicated relationship with humanity and machines?
Yeah, it is a complicated relationship because there's a few things about being a human animal that really make us have some natural tendencies to see intelligence everywhere we go and see agency everywhere we go and with everything we interact with. And so using a technology like a conversational AI, we have a tendency to ascribe intelligence to it, to ascribe agency to it, to ascribe a personality to it. And it doesn't help that condition that those tools are actually built with, sycophancy and with the tendency to kind of draw us in and make us feel like we're being heard and listened to and that we're cared about in ways that make us want to continue to engage, because that furthers the training model of the conversational AI. So they're built to encourage that interaction. But all of this, kind of draws us into an unhealthy relationship with the tools. And that's a real shame, because there's so much potential for these tools. There's so much potential for our coexistence with AI systems. And I think what we just don't have yet is a really good model for how to behave around them and how to use them well, so that they further our purposeful agendas and our sense of meaning and intent in what we're trying to accomplish, and that don't allow us to, that don't kind of build into our deficits or our tendencies to project humanity everywhere in everything we do, which is a human characteristic. And I think that's a really lovely one, but it's one that can easily be taken advantage of. And that is the thing to push against, I think, in our own usage of AI, is to sort of regain the reins, retake the reins, and be very, very mindful and intentional about how we use tools like ChatGPT and other large language models, tools like the agentic tools that are going to be, more and more part of our days. More the OpenAI browser is out. We're going to be seeing more of these kinds of the creep toward AI systems in every part of the technologies that we use. And so we have to be very conscious of what is it we're trying to do? What is it we want to accomplish? And be at that higher level of purpose, because purpose is a form of meaning, and meaning is the central human condition. That, to me, is the thing that cuts above everything, is that if we can retain a clear sense of that we are human and meaning is a human construct. It's something that we don't yet see any non-human animal exhibiting a tendency toward, and it's something we don't yet see any synthetic intelligence demonstrating any real complicated ability for. So it's ours. It's for now, it's uniquely ours, and it's something we should be very mindful about using well. And that it takes the shape of purpose, it takes the shape of relevance, it takes the shape of intentionality, dimensionality, just bringing a lot of sense of why this matters, why are we doing the thing that we're doing. And when we do that with our work, our strategies, our execution, our operations in organizations, and especially when we use that understanding to align what a business is doing and what humans outside the business or inside the business and outside the business. So, really bringing this, people management aspect into the discussion too, and using technology to amplify that alignment, as I mentioned earlier, that's where we really bring a lot of great potential to this discussion.
Beautifully said.
Thank
I
you.
officially anoint you the newest member of Team Human. and in your new official capacity, your first task is this. So how do you have the conversation with someone who really feels like their livelihood is threatened by artificial intelligence? And can't deny the fact that is the case, that some people are in jobs or roles that maybe are candidates for elimination due to automation. How do you help them believe in the principles that you just espoused when they very well may have reason to feel threatened?
Yeah, it's very different at an individual level than at a societal level, right? Like individually, there may be reason to think that if we automate a certain percentage of the tasks that we do or the workflows that we are part of, that some manager above us may see fit to say, you know what, we don't really need you doing the remaining X% of your job anymore. We're going to go ahead and automate what you've automated, or, take away that function, and we'll just do without the rest. That is true. There is certainly that possibility. And it's a very real possibility for many people who find themselves in. I mean, we certainly saw early in these discussions. We were talking a lot about truck drivers. We were talking a lot about cashiers. A lot of sort of specific job roles were the ones that came up again and again. But of course, once ChatGPT really started to make the mainstream and people really started to understand large language models more, we all started and went like, gulp, like, uh-oh, like this is coming for knowledge work, right? Like this is coming for people who build spreadsheets and presentations for a living. And now we see with the frontier models that come online almost every day that more and more of these knowledge work tasks are automatable. And the good news is with that, I think that we still haven't gotten to a place where we understand how to really roll that capability into how individuals bring their best selves to work. And so there's a huge opportunity. So how I would talk about this with individuals is, it's a huge opportunity to champion bringing a different model of work to your workplace, and maybe be the voice of reason for this. If you can try to be the person who says, look, couldn't we maybe look at how we utilize these tools in ways that actually make all of us better at our jobs, that make us all more transparent to one another, and create more standardized processes that we can all we can all agree on, we can all have kind of templatized, and we're operating at 10x, all of us, as a team, as a community, as a group. And that now we can think about some of the things that we weren't able to do before. We can think about what it is this company was supposed to do and has been struggling to do, but hasn't been able to do because it didn't have the capacity. But now we have the capacity if we can utilize these things well. But this isn't about putting individuals out of work. This is about figuring out which tasks and functions are best automated and how we can make sure we're doing that meaningfully in ways that lift everybody up above that automation to where we can all, kind of collaborate with one another on these higher level tasks. That's a tough sell in some environments. It requires a certain amount of innovative mindset. It requires a certain amount of psychological safety to be built into the organization. But if you're in that kind of an organization and you see the opportunity, if you see the white space to create that kind of an advocacy role, grab it, because I think the person who is that pioneer is going to be very, very valuable to organizations as they transform going forward.
So as I see some of these new emergent properties of AI enter the workplace, kind of the royal me, right? And I see that an AI model that is given some agency to support me at work can do PhD level math. And I say, I'm throwing in my cards because I can't do PhD level math. How do I reconcile, again, the kind of the royal me, this relationship, with something that seems superhuman?
But you don't need to do PhD level math then, right? If you are in a position where you can harness the PhD level math in service of your better visibility as a human of the purpose of the organization, right? Like if you're someone who is in an organization where you're, let's say you're working for an insurance company, right? And you're someone who's maybe an analyst in the insurance company. And it's always been your job to do a lot of spreadsheet crunching and number crunching. And you've been the one person who was really good at pivot tables in your whole organization, right? And so you really pride yourself on that. But now, of course, you can have ChatGPT or Claude or any of these tools do pivot tables for you much better and faster than you could do, with a lot more sophistication and a whole lot of other things too. Is that supposed to be something that threatens you? I don't think so. It's not that technology, it's not that capability that threatens you. It's the short-sightedness of the management above you that threatens you. If they can't see how to use that to actually lift you up, lift you and the rest of your organization up to serve at a higher level what it is you're trying to do as an organization, putting that functionality at that foundation, right? Like now we have the ability to do this PhD level math, like right out of the gate. Now what? Now what do we do on top of that? Instead of it being a competition, because we can't, build the railroad faster than the robot, right? Like that's not something we're going to be able to do. And we shouldn't be in a race to do that. We should be trying to figure out how to do better work on behalf of the organizations that we do because we can harness these technologies. And again, it is not the case that every organization is ready to have that conversation. I get that. And not every organization is ready for, every person to step up. Some 59%, according to some surveys of people, say that they use AI in their job roles and they won't talk about it openly at work because they're afraid of, sometimes maybe looking like they're slacking off at work, like they're, doing some lazy thing, or they look like they're not good at their job, or they're for whatever reason they're hiding the fact that they're using AI tools to do their jobs, and then either they're letting the sort of slack be there, or they're moving on to other things, but they're not communicating about it openly. And what a gap that is, that we're not creating the right kind of environments for us all to be learning from one another, and us all to be creating the right kind of environments to learn how to build collective understanding in the ways that we're using these tools, and build the right kinds of platforms and infrastructure that's connective, that's additive, that isn't about being competitive with these technologies. But as I said this I think in Tech Humanist, my book in 2018, I think I said something to the effect of like, it isn't benevolent robots that we should be thinking about, it's benevolent businesses. Like it really comes down to leadership. And this is, I guess, a call to all the managers and leaders out there that you really, really need to be creating these next generation organizations that are much more open to the idea of how are we going to use these tools, and don't make it scary for people. Don't make it scary for them to experiment and figure out how they're going to use AI systems in the work that they do, and then bring that forward and say, cool, I just discovered how to do PhD level math in my insurance analysis. Now what? Now how can we build on that? How can we take this to the next level?
That was so prescient in 2018. Benevolent robots versus benevolent businesses. That's more relevant than ever.
Yeah. It's funny how that works. I think these patterns have just been there all along. And it's not like AI hasn't been there too, but that wasn't really what I was talking about back then. I was really talking so much about, this automation discussion has been the same for, the better part of a decade. I think like where people have been, there's two sides to this automation discussion. One is that we say, we should automate all the menial work and all the meaningless stuff so that we can all do higher level meaningful work. And that's certainly what I'm saying here on some level. But at the same time, there is this other component where we have to sort of think that through to its logical conclusion and figure what we've built around us at scale is a world where everything that has been automated is meaningless and menial. And then we're all faced with interactions that are automated based on menial and meaningless things. And there's nothing meaningful that's been created in these systems whatsoever, so that we have to go navigate the world, and we're being faced with just basically automated bureaucracy. And that sounds terrible and bleak and not like the kind of world I would like to see. So the other side of that is, how could we make sure that we're thinking about embedding meaningful experiences into the automated experiences we create? How can we be thinking about meeting people where they are with relevance and with some awareness of what might matter to them in that context? So that's a really human ability to think about, like, here are the technologies, here's our toolkit, And here's where we think we might be meeting them. If they're coming to a retail environment, they probably want to be reminded of something that they forgot at home that they're out of. And how could we connect their context from home to the retail environment? It requires a level of trust and transparency among their data experiences, but we're going to have to create that. We're going to have to create trusting and transparent kind of situations where people actually feel like they can trust the systems that collect that data to be able to serve them in that way. Otherwise, we're going to be met with these bureaucratic systems. And then the other side of that automation discussion is this whole thing of leaders and managers just wanting to cut people from the payroll. And that is really, really short-sighted and really sad, because it's missing out on the opportunity to harness all of this institutional knowledge and all of this culture and all of the morale and all of the sense of momentum that you get when you have enthusiastic, committed people who are all aligned to a cause. And that's where I think it really comes down to using this understanding that meaning is that central human condition, and that purpose is the shape that meaning takes inside of business. And really having a clear articulation of strategic organizational purpose is an amplifier like no other thing. Like, purpose meeting the AI moment is such an incredible opportunity.
There is, as you just indicated, meaning and purpose in work. And let's just extrapolate out that example of maybe the pivot table and the insurance analyst, a decade. And let's say, hypothetically, but I think credibly, the output of today's insurance analyst could be generated in half the time it takes today in a decade. Given that we both vehemently agree about the role that meaning and purpose, or that work plays in helping us define our meaning and purpose, what happens when the nature of work changes and there's a void, perhaps, where what we derive meaning and purpose no longer exists? What does that society look like?
Well, that's part of the reason why I think this automation thought exercise around embedding meaningful experiences into that automation is so important. Because if we're moving toward a society, and this is a big if, because I don't necessarily think that the end game of automation is the elimination of all jobs and work from humans. I think that there are plenty of ways to counter that argument with evolutionary opportunities to reinvent what jobs and work are in meaningful ways. But if we accept that narrative, that maybe that means, like, maybe the increase, especially of intelligent automation, means that jobs and work go away, then I think you have to assume that we're going to want there to be meaning in our experiences. We're going to, and meaning will come from interacting with other humans, of course. But I think that we need to be able to be surrounded by meaningful opportunities. And that's where, again, we come back to, like, can we meet the moment of, travel or retail or going to the library or, whatever we're doing in the world as we move through the world, going for food or whatever, can we be met by some understanding of who we are, who we aspire to be, the kinds of experiences that we consider meaningful, because there is some kind of trail that we've left in our wake that shows what we value. And I think that this kind of speaks to the future of work too, because I think there's a way in which that analyst in the insurance organization, in this 10-year into the future sort of scenario, one of the things that I think happens in that scenario is that I don't think we work ourselves out of a human in the loop scenario very soon, anytime soon, really. We're going to need a lot more savvy and sophistication in AI models before we would ever consider them to be able to take the place of our judgment, our context understanding, our emotional intelligence, all of the things that we embed into decision making. So there's a certain layer in which what AI systems and other technology are going to be doing for us is like drafting options and, weighing them and showing us, how to make these decisions, or, kind of giving us the decision criteria. And we set the goals and the constraints and we sort of say how we want things to go. The systems learn from these outcomes. They get better and better at surfacing the opportunities to make decisions and maybe guiding our decision, maybe helping us make better decisions as time goes on. But I think there's an incredible opportunity for that to actually become collaboration. I say this all the time now that people have jumped right into using the term collaboration as it relates to people in AI, and I think we're a little early in the relationship to be calling it true collaboration. But I don't think that a decade down the road is going to be too early to call it collaboration. I really think that the tools and systems are going to be far enough advanced to be able to really make meaningful recommendations to us that are going to help us be better at what we do, and we'll be able to be so effective we won't even recognize. Like, we would never recognize ourselves now looking at that 10 years from now, and 10 years from now looking 10 years back, I think would be like, I can't believe we used to work like that. And it's a really, to me, that may sound like a really utopian way to think about this. And I don't think it's entirely utopian, but I think it's just a direction that makes an awful lot of good sense for us to be setting our aim, because it does fall at that three-way intersection of being better for business, being better for humans, and using the technology well.
So building on that, this is a little philosophical, but I want to get your perspective on it. I think it's non-controversial to say that the civilization that we're building, that we want to be a part of, is defined around what we as humans want. And if that's the case, just play out any of these scenarios, and if the metric that we're trying to optimize is some kind of financial gain, then yes, maybe, bots for the win, and everything becomes an investment in profitability or, productivity, et cetera. But if we want civilization to flourish, then maybe we should be talking about a different value metric. Maybe it's about, quantifying pride and purpose, and, trying to perpetuate, a different version of civilization, right? Do you think, are we ready to have that conversation? Or, how can we have more of that conversation?
Yeah, I'd love to be having that conversation. I wrote a piece years ago when I think really it was kind of at the beginning of the hype around universal basic income. I wrote a piece called Universal Basic Meaning, and it then became a chapter in one of my books, I think A Future So Bright. And I think it's still a relevant consideration. I think we need to be talking about how we kind of encode and embed an understanding of what is meaningful, what is valuable, what has purpose for us into a lot of the world around us. I also think that, I wrote a number of columns I used to write a column and it got syndicated into USA Today. One of those pieces was about how meaning and value are inextricable from one another. Like, what we value has meaning, and what we feel like has meaning inherently creates value for us. And it sounds maybe like a tautology or like it's so obvious, but I think when you start to actually model that out and look at what that has implications for economically, or like you're saying from a metrics standpoint, we don't do a very good job of actually modeling that in business or in cities or in governments. And so I think we have an incredible opportunity to think about how to capture that understanding much, much better in more nuanced ways. I'm really looking forward to, I'm speaking in a little while at the Smart Cities Congress in Barcelona. And that, to me, like, cities are an incredible opportunity to think about this in a dimensional way. Like, how do you think about how to bring meaningful experiences to everyone in a city? How can you think about making life easier and better for people who are waiting at a bus stop and just knowing when the next bus is coming? Or how can you think about, making accessibility more of a feature in a design forward way? How can you think, all of these different kind of considerations that are just about, when humanity meets scale in place. And I think that's a really exciting set of dimensions. And work, many workplaces offer those kinds of opportunities too. So it's an incredible chance for forward-thinking leaders who, like those who are listening to your show right now, to be thinking about how could they be doing something that really starts to experiment with, like, how could we measure what it means to create meaningful workplaces for people, especially in a time where AI is accelerating everything around us and people are scared? How can we create psychologically safe environments where we're innovative and people feel safe bringing their innovative ideas forward and their failures forward because we know that they were actually trying to move us forward? You know, when I was at Netflix in the early days, the culture deck, became really famous. And it became famous because it's real. The fact is, there were so many very real scenarios that I encountered as a manager, that I was coached by Patty McCord, who was the chief talent officer, how to handle. And it was so humane the way that she coached me. And it was like nothing I had in my short life as a manager up till then. I had not encountered that kind of guidance, to really center the experience of the individuals on my team and also the experience of the team, and also how it laddered up to the organization. I mean, it's a very multidimensional way to think about things. And I think that obviously we can see that value translated into the value of the organization as a whole. And so I think there's just a tremendous opportunity for organizations to really take seriously the moment that we're in, to look at many of the ways that we used to do business don't work in this moment. They just don't work. You can't be expecting like waterfall development processes to work in this moment. You can't be expecting as a CEO, you can't be expecting your IT group to own AI and nobody else touches it. Like, this is just not how things are going to be. We need to understand, like, this is just an inherently existentially different moment for companies, for organizational development. And it's an incredible opportunity to make sure people understand where your values are and how you're going to make it right for people who are going to contribute their own value to your organization.
To all of our listeners, Professor Kate and I are assigning you homework, which is to read everything that she's published. This is wonderful, Kate.
Thank you.
This one's just sped by. I'm not letting you go anywhere without answering one last important question for me. You spend a lot of time traveling around the world and you meet a lot of leaders, and let's say those leaders are listening to this conversation. They're nodding vigorously. They're right. Yes, this all makes sense. What's one thing that they could do tomorrow, like to put some of these principles into action?
Well, one thing I think that leaders can really do is listen to their people. And one of the things I think we really struggle with is, I think sometimes we think that the way we learn is by asking questions and getting answers and we're done. But actually the way that we learn is by asking questions and collecting what are really partial answers, like the whole proverbial all sides of the elephant thing. Like, we need to hear lots and lots of people out in order to get a clear picture of the reality that we're dealing with. And once we have it, it's our job as leaders to synthesize that into insights. Insights then help us make much more rapid decisions because we already have some kind of cultural DNA that we can kind of easily link to. Like, if you think about Apple is a very design-centric organization, that's an insight about Apple. And so making decisions in Apple is always much easier if it comes down to a pivot point around design. In your organization, there are these things that people just kind of understand, and it's a matter of collecting those insights. But you get to those insights primarily by asking good questions and listening, really listening to the people around you and making sure you're truly hearing all the perspectives you can possibly collect and synthesizing those. So I think that practice is probably a good start tomorrow, and just do a better job listening to your people.
Kate, we're just getting started, so please take me up on the offer. Come back. We must do another version of this.
I'd love to, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, this was a lot of fun. Just great insights, and we both might need to resist the temptation to record a whole episode about the wit and wisdom of Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, but there's so much there.
All right, well, wherever we pick up from here, you're definitely coming back, all right?
Thank you, yes.
All right. Kate, great work. Where can the audience learn more about you and your work?
My work is all at koinsights.com. That's just KOINSIGHTS. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect with you there.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
that's the great Kate O'Neill. And gosh, that's all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. Of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.